Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Femininity series. And I wanted to make this episode because one of the pretty girls in the Patreon was talking about how ever since she became skinny, she feels like she has kind of like this wholesome privilege. And I feel like wholesome privilege that actually ties into femininity. I feel the same thing as well. I think that when you are at a healthy weight, people don't tend to sexualize your body the same way that they would like a fat ass or something like that. And I think that one of the benefits of being perceived as wholesome is you get away with more stuff. You can get away with more stuff. A lot of people, they stereotype you as being a good girl, even if you're not. But let me read this pretty girl's comment. She said, "Hey, Exoticals United, I wonder if you can make a video addressing this. I feel that ever since reaching my goal weight, I have this wholesome girl pedestal. Strangers trust me so easily with certain things, it's kind of uncomfortable. I also get approached often by people wanting me to go to Bible study. Oddly, it'll be the days I look the cutest that I get approached the most in this manner. It's so weird to me because I have a bit of sexiness to my style. I dress girly, but I also like showing off my shape or cleavage, etc., so I don't know why people keep assuming I'm a church girl. It's driving me crazy because I'm not religious, and it's constant. This did not happen nearly as much when I was bigger. I'm wondering if people could be doing this also because, since losing weight, people also keep thinking I'm 18 or 20. I'm 29 and not super skinny. I'm curvy, small on top, and medium on bottom, for context. I also want to add this. I feel that since getting to this size, I have way less men around my age approaching me and asking me out. Before, it was constant, but now I just get a lot more looks and stares and getting hit on by younger guys. I know you have spoken about people thinking you're much younger than you are, so I was wondering how you deal with this. I feel so gorgeous lately, but these social patterns are starting to annoy me. Yeah, I've noticed that same thing with myself as well, being a size small, like a size extra small to a size small at the biggest. I do notice that people tend to stereotype you as being younger, but in my case, I notice it depends on what I wear. So if I'm showing my belly button, I'm going to be stereotyped as being young. I told you guys the stories about being yelled at in CVS, having people be rude to me at the dentist office. Like the dentist literally told me that I could not go to the bathroom, which is fucking ridiculous. How are you going to tell your patient when you're a dentist? How are you going to say, oh no, you can just wait until after we're done doing the teeth cleaning, then you can go to the bathroom? Like, bitch, how are you going to control my bladder? That's fucking insane. But I feel like when you have a smaller body, a lot of people, they associate you with being docile. They seem to associate you with being kind of like dainty, almost like this delicate, dainty princess, so it works in the sense that you're going to have people being more protective over you. So I think that is an aspect of feminine privilege. But I think a negative part is sometimes people will try to dominate you or they try to tell you what to do because they think you're just a young dumbass. Like in my case, that's what happened at the dentist office. Like, you really think I'm that dumb to where I'm not going to go to the bathroom? Bitch, it's my body. I don't care if it's time for my appointment. If I have to go to the bathroom, I'm going to the bathroom. Okay, sorry, I'm going on a rant. But this pretty girl says she feels like she has a wholesome girl pedestal. So I have felt that way as well. So in terms of what I wear, like as a skinny woman, I do wear a lot of sexy clothing too. So cleavage, but I really don't have cleavage like that. And then in terms of wearing like my belly, I feel like showing your belly button, that's considered to be very sexy. It's very rare. Most women can't show their belly buttons because they have a gut right there. So I think showing your belly button, it does make people view you as a little bit younger because when I did my social experiments on the Patreon, anytime I wore like casual clothes, so a t-shirt showing my belly button, leggings, wearing my hair in a side braid in particular, that was when I was stereotyped as young. But in terms of the wholesome thing, I think that when you're skinny, you actually can get away with wearing more revealing clothing and they don't view you as being super promiscuous because remember those ladies at the Houston rodeo? I made a video about them. They literally canceled the entire dress code because some belugas wore some Daisy Dukes. But if you look like Jessica Simpson in Daisy Dukes, or, if you're just tall and skinny and your body looks clean and toned and, you look like you're hygienic, Nobody is going to shame you in the same way as they would shame an obese woman. And I think that that ties into having wholesome privilege or being perceived as kind of this trophy. Even like the trophy wife, like that whole stereotype. By the way, I am not telling you to be a trophy wife at all. But I'm saying that stereotype, usually when they picture those women, they are women who are thin. They are women who have thin bodies, they're in shape, they have like a pretty face or whatever. So I think that can contribute to you being stereotyped as wholesome. Because when I look at when I was a beluga, everything I wore was so I could cover something up. I was trying to cover my stomach, cover my thighs, cover the boobs, cover the love handles, cover the muffin top. Everything is trying to be covered. And I think that the fashion industry, they create clothes for plus size women that are supposed to cover up the rolls. But then when you're skinny, you don't have to cover anything. Like there's nothing to cover. There's literally no fat there. Your whole entire top can be held up by strings, and people, they tend to stereotype me as being more classy. They stereotype me as being classier than what I really am. They stereotype me as well as being more wholesome. And I think part of that is from being an exotical. Part of that comes from our collective image. But think about it. The collective image of skinny women in the media is actually a much better collective image than like obese women or women who are like kind of chunky and like frumpy looking. But this pretty girl says, strangers trust me so easily with certain things. It's kind of uncomfortable. I also get approached often by people wanting me to go to Bible study. Yeah, religious people tend to have a desire to control you. When you're very beautiful, people in the church, they want to recruit you into their church. I don't see people trying to witness and recruit all the ugly women. Even when it comes to men, those Christian guys who they love chasing after the non-Christian women, or like the Mormon guys, they love chasing non-Mormon women. There's always somebody who's religious who's chasing after you when you're pretty and skinny because you're a prize. They view you as the prize. You are considered a prize in their community. You're considered a trophy. And a lot of people have this power desire. They have this power fantasy about you. When you're skinny and pretty, they have a fantasy that they can change you or mold you or kind of like turn you into this trad wife type of thing. So I've noticed a lot of people from churches, they especially want to try to get the pretty girl. They want all the pretty skinny women to join the church. Because when you're pretty and thin, people view you as the pinnacle of femininity. They view you as like somebody that they aspire to be. Think about it. All the pretty girls in the media, even the pretty mean girls, all the cheerleaders, all the Barbie dolls, all of the pageant girls, these women are thin. These women have a healthy weight. So your body in and of itself is considered to be a prize in our society. Think about it. There's a multi-billion-dollar fitness industry. There are gyms making millions of dollars because millions of people right now are sweating their asses off on the treadmill trying to get your body. They're sweating their asses off. They're over here on the stair stepper for 90 minutes a day trying to get your body. So I think that anybody who has a pedestal, you're definitely going to have religious people and church people trying to recruit you like, oh, you should come to the Bible study. Oh, you should come join our church. Yeah, of course they want you to join their church so they can monitor you, so they can gossip about you, so they can marry you off to their dusty sons. Have you ever noticed that when you're a pretty woman that has feminine privilege, there's always a boy mom who wants to advertise her dusty son? There's always some boy mom who's like, oh, you should marry my son Michael. He's about your age and you're just his type. He likes tall, thin, light-skinned women. And as a matter of fact, I've actually been told that by somebody in my city. She was like, yeah, my son, he has this really successful business. His business got $1 million contract, so he's doing very well. And you are his type. He likes tall, skinny, light-skinned women. And it's like, why is it that you're specifically pinpointing me? Why don't you go to the beluga women? Why don't you go to the 500-pound women? What if I was secretly a hoe? What if I was not even straight? What if I was like, you don't know who I am. But I think that this wholesome girl pedestal, that is definitely a stereotype that a lot of thin women get, especially if you dress a little bit retro. So maybe you wear a lot of like peasant tops or like cap sleeve or something that looks like it's from the 1950s. If you have kind of this Jackie Kennedy or Michelle Obama type of style, I think that also makes people stereotype you as being more wholesome. Meanwhile, if you're a beluga and you dress like that, then you just look like a librarian. You just look like a lunch lady or a teacher or something. But if you're skinny and pretty, people think, oh, she's a wholesome girl, that she's like a wife type, or she's some sort of trad wife or something. So they're kind of projecting what they want you to be. It's like, yeah, of course you want to marry that girl. She looks like a fucking supermodel. Of course you want to be friends with her. She's a status symbol. Have you ever had people who specifically want to be your friend because they just want to see what it's like to be you? They just want to see, oh, what's it like to be so pretty? What's it like to be viewed as wholesome? How does it feel to be able to dress slutty and then you still get stereotyped as a good girl? Honestly, I think it's pretty awesome to still be stereotyped as a good girl, because even when I think of my own style, I do think that my style is kind of bimbo adjacent sometimes. Like, I do wear a lot of belly shirts. I wear a lot of cutout shirts where it's like it's cut out in the breast area, or like maybe it's completely backless, or it's like a low cut, the low cut jeans and stuff that like Meg the Stallion wears. So I wear a lot of stuff like that as well. And people still tend to stereotype it as looking classy and like, oh, well, no, she's just classy. She's just a model. She has like this model-esque type of appearance. And I think part of that is because no one is offended by your body for the most part. Like, just imagine if you were 500 pounds and you're wearing like a see-through top, or, it's cut out. Some people are actually offended by seeing all that fat hanging out and seeing all the cellulite. And then especially if you have a smell, because some women are so big that they can't reach certain areas on their body. So, and by the way, that's something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. How some women who are big, some of them are so big that they can't shower properly. So I think that when you're skinny, people stereotype you as having better hygiene. They stereotype you as being disciplined, and they feel like you're high status. Like, you must have somewhere important to go. If you're that skinny, you're that in shape, you spent all that time building that six pack or whatever, and now you're wearing these cute halter tops and stuff, you must have somewhere important to be. But this pretty girl, she said, it'll be the days that I look the cutest that I get approached the most in this manner. It's so weird to me because I have a bit of sexiness to my style. I dress girly, but I also like showing off my shape or cleavage, so I don't know why people keep assuming I'm a church girl. It's driving me crazy, because I'm not religious and it's constant. This did not happen nearly as much when I was bigger. I'm wondering if people could be doing this because since losing weight, people keep thinking I'm 18 or 20. I'm 29 and not super skinny, small on top and medium on bottom. Just to add, I feel that since getting to this size, I have way less men around my age approaching me and asking me out. While a lot of men who are 29 years old, a lot of those men are broke. And especially if you're dating any man of color, statistically speaking, men of color do tend to make less money. So I think that by the time a lot of guys reach about 30, they start to realize how much of a dusty they actually are. Usually men who are just in their mid-20s, those men are still kind of in their prime, for lack of better words. When a man is in his early 20s, that's the most desirable he'll ever be in most cases. Because think about it, he was in college. He was surrounded by women. Colleges on average have what? A ratio of what? 20-1 women to men. So that's the most abundance he will ever experience when it comes to being around women, is kind of in his 20s. Usually it's when women are a little bit less experienced. That's when women fall for the dusties the most, is when they're the young girls. They don't really know. They've never been in a relationship yet. They've never been hurt yet by a guy or whatever. And that's why some men prey on these younger women. But a lot of young men in their early 20s, they haven't realized how dusty they are yet. But if you're 29, let's say you're dating a guy that's 30 or, somewhere in his 30s, well, yeah, most men, by the time they hit their 30s, those men start to realize, oh, wait, I'm a loser. I'm a bum. And so I think that that's actually good. Getting hit on or approached less often, that's not a bad thing at all. I think that sometimes you're kind of narrowing out the dusty. You're repelling the dusties. You're repelling the 30-year-old losers who know that they can't approach you. And also, I think your environment has to do with that as well. Like, where are you where you feel like you should be getting approached, but you're not? Where were you located? Were you at a bar? Were you in the grocery store? All of that stuff matters too. And then another question there is, if you're, like for this pretty girl who commented, if you date non-black men, usually non-black men are less likely to just be like, "Hey baby, how you doing?" That's not really the norm. So, especially if you're in an affluent area. And by the way, I tell more information about this stuff in my Patreon. Generally speaking, you're not going to hear me say many positive things about men on my public YouTube channel. If you want any more in-depth dating type of content, that's going to all be on my members page. And the members page is videos, and my Patreon is just audios. So it's up to you which one you want to be a part of. Um, but I think there are several different types of femininity privilege. So you got the beauty privilege. So these are the women where people are like, she's attractive. So what are the social rewards that attractive women get? Well, you get attention, you get compliments. You're kind of making a good first impression. I feel like when you're pretty, you make a good first impression, like because you look good. So when someone first sees you, they're kind of like, "Oh wow," or they might be shocked. That's an example of kind of this beauty privilege. And then when I think of the wholesome privilege, I think of emotional safety, like kind of the girl next door type of vibe. Like, oh, she makes me feel safe. She's a good girl. So that's up to you. Do you want to be perceived as the wholesome girl? Do you want to be perceived as the woman who makes people feel safe? So, those women, they tend to have more people trusting them. So actually, a lot of people, they will spill their tea with you as well. Have you ever had people tell you all their secrets? They just tell you all their business. Well, it's because you might have wholesome privilege. They might perceive you as someone who's not going to tell. Like, oh, she seems wholesome and sweet. She's not going to tell anybody all my business. Okay, well, now you know all the information about that person, and now you get to use that to your advantage if you need to. Also, when I think about wholesome privilege, I'm thinking about the whimsical exoticals. So these are the girls who just, they pick flowers and they do like gardening and stuff like that. Maybe they're always in a dress. Think about what clothing items people tend to perceive as wholesome. Like in my mind, a dress just popped up, or like those cap sleeves, like the puff sleeve, anything that reminds me of a princess. That's kind of what pops up in my head when I think about wholesome privilege as a part of your femininity. So the question is, what kind of femininity do you want to exude? Because I think femininity, it's not just about being a woman. I think there is an art to femininity. I think that being feminine is actually a lifestyle. I think that you can have a fluid sense of femininity as well. So you could be the wholesome girl one day, and then maybe tomorrow you want to tap into the bad girl aesthetic. Maybe you want to look more goth, or you want to be kind of like edgy. You want to have this edgy type of femininity. So I think that part of how I decide what kind of femininity I want to exude, it's based on my mood. So how am I feeling? Like right now it's August, it's about to be fall, which is my favorite season. Happy fall to all the exoticals. So lately I've been thinking more about wearing black and being a little bit edgy. Maybe I'm going to wear some burgundy lipstick or something. Or maybe I'll do like a black lipstick or like a purple, like a raisin colored lipstick, because that's a part of the mood that I'm in. So I think femininity, there's an artistry to your femininity. You know how people talk about music artists? And they'll be like, oh, she has very strong artistry. She's very creative. Well, I think that the same concept can be applied to femininity. So my creativity privilege, that taps into my femininity as well. So for this pretty girl, if you don't like being perceived as wholesome, well, you can just dress differently, or you can just, I don't know, wear some red lipstick, maybe wear like a leather jacket or something instead. And you can actually do social experiments. That's what I do in the Patreon all the time. Like I've literally done experiments dressing up in a different outfit, seeing how I'm perceived. I told you guys that my favorite place to experiment with my femininity is the grocery store, because it's very low stakes. It's not an important place, so even if I look bad or something happens or I have a wardrobe malfunction, I'm just at the grocery store, so it's not a big deal. But I think that's a good way to kind of test out what different types of femininity you like the best. And for the pretty girl who commented, she said that she feels like a lot of younger guys are hitting on her, not really the guys that she wants to hit on her. So if I'm thinking about dating or something like that, I'm not even going to hang out in spaces where there are 21-year-olds. Like, I don't even want to be in the same vicinity as like some 21-year-old hyper ADHD college boy. I don't even hang out in those spaces. So I think that as far as that goes, that has more to do with your location and your environment. Where are you going? Are you going to a club? That's going to have a lot of YNs and, young frat boys and all that shit. In my case, I tend to do a lot of 30s activities. I'm in my mid 30s, so I tend to do a lot of activities that people in their mid 30s do, such as tennis, pickleball, golfing. Well, actually, I stopped doing golfing because unambiguous women started doing it, so I'm no longer doing it. But tennis, pickleball, maybe like going to a hiking club, doing beach volleyball. Those are the activities in my city that people 35 and up tend to do. So I think your environment also plays a role when it comes to like who's hitting on you. So for this pretty girl, she commented about this. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. But also the way that I dress. Okay, so let's say I'm being perceived as wholesome or I'm being perceived as younger than I am and I don't like it, then I won't wear that hairstyle anymore or I won't wear that outfit anymore. Like, depending on what I wear, that's gonna change my perceived age. Like what you wear, it can change your desirability, it can change your approachability as well. There's not just one way to be feminine. So I would say if you are receiving wholesome privilege and you don't like it, then that means you need to change something about either yourself or your environment if you don't like that particular privilege. Like in my case, in terms of religious people, I actually don't hang out with religious people anymore. Like if I meet a girl and she is a church girl and she's very into religion and stuff, I already know that we're probably not going to really get along super well because I do tend to push back on a lot of religious talking points. Also, my lifestyle, I don't live a religious lifestyle. So, me and that girl, we're not going to be compatible as friends. So, I can still be nice to her. Like, I'll be cordial. She can be kind of in my distant circle, but she's not going to be in my inner circle because the friends that you hang out with, that affects your feminine privilege as well. So my question is, okay, my friends, are they all like homely church girls and stuff? Because if I'm dressed very wholesome and I'm also skinny and petite and dainty, and then I hang out with a bunch of like trad wife types of women, then of course, I'm going to be grouped in more so with them. That's why I said that my environment actually counts a lot. Like part of why I stopped doing golfing is because a lot of unambiguous women came in and they were super desperate to get the male attention and chasing after the guys, being super loud, getting drunk and shit, like on the course, just acting sloppy. So I stopped going. I stopped hanging out in those spaces because I don't even want to be in the same vicinity or in the same room with the types of women that I don't want to be associated with. Like in terms of feminine privilege or whatever, that's not the type of femininity I want to exude. I didn't want to do the party girl femininity. That wasn't what I was going for on the golf course. So if I'm on the golf course and all of them are being party girls and I'm hanging out with all of them and then they're all sloppy drunk and shit and then like desperately chasing after or like cougars, if they're being cougars and shit, like how they were in my city, that's just not really the vibe that I want to be around. So I think that part of your feminine privilege is also determined by your environment as well. So like in my case, if I don't want privilege from those people, I'm not going to hang out with them. I don't care about getting church girl pretty privilege. I don't really care about getting golf course pretty privilege or being a cougar. That's not really what I want to do. So I think one of the questions that I will ask myself too is who do I want the privilege from? So for this pretty girl who said, "Oh, the guys who approach me aren't age appropriate." Okay, what age are you trying to hang out with? 30, 31, 32, 33? What exact age, what exact race? Those are going to be the two most important questions. What race of people are you trying to hang out with? What race of people are you trying to get privilege from? Black people, white people, Asian, what kind of Asian? Korean, Japanese, what? So what race and then what age? Because there's not just one type of femininity that works everywhere. Like privilege in and of itself is subjective. So the pretty privilege that you'll get at a nightclub is going to be different from the type of pretty privilege you'll get in college or the type of pretty privilege you get at work. So, what sort of femininity do you want to exude? What's the goal with your femininity? So, if you want to be viewed as wholesome, why? Why do you want to be viewed as wholesome? What benefits are you trying to gain by being viewed as wholesome? Are you trying to get more money, get a promotion at work? I don't know, be viewed as innocent. Maybe you're trying to be mischievous and then you want to get away with it, which I'm not judging, by the way. But yeah, it's like, what kind of rewards do I want to attain from my femininity? That's a question that I ask myself all the time before I get dressed, before I do my makeup, before I decide what environment to go to. Because my friends, they'll invite me. They'll be like, hey, do you want to go to this random club? Do you want to go to this lounge? Do you want to go to this restaurant? And depending on the location and the demographics of who's going to be there, that's going to determine whether I say yes or no. Because if that's not the type of feminine privilege I want that day, then I'm wasting my time by going there. And another thing about the wholesome privilege that tends to maximize female social acceptance. Like there's the femininity that appeals to the female gaze, and then there's femininity that appeals to the male gaze. So the wholesome femininity, that's going to be more appealing to women because they're less threatened because you look wholesome, right? So maybe you're wearing a long dress that goes down to the floor. Maybe you're modest. I don't know. So there's that sort of wholesome feminine privilege. And then there's kind of this good girl, girl next door, kind of trad wife thing that appeals to like these religious types of men, kind of these conservative types, the white boomers or whatever. Some people call it the old money aesthetic. So I think that also ties into the wholesome privilege thing. So, the question is, do you like that? Do you want to attract that? Or do you want to tap into kind of this bad girl? Like in my case, I do tend to tap into a little bit more of this dark femininity, kind of this bad girl type of thing. Like even with my personality on YouTube, I will kind of exaggerate my cattiness a little bit because, it's fun to be the villain sometimes. Like it's cool, in my opinion, to sometimes be the villain or to be the most hated or whatever, to be the one that everyone's talking about or to be the one that people are trying to ignore and, kind of being the underdog or whatever. So you have to kind of decide, okay, which benefits do I want? Who am I trying to appeal to with my femininity? The male gaze, the female gaze, or is this just me trying to satisfy my inner child for today? So, maybe I just feel like wearing a pink fluffy dress because it makes me feel more comforted today. Or maybe I'm trying to celebrate that it's fall without being a beluga. So instead of drinking a pumpkin spice latte, maybe I'm going to wear a shirt that has pumpkins on it. Like that's something that I do all the time. If I want to be festive for the holidays, instead of eating, I might just wear a sweater or something that goes along with the holidays, so kind of like a Christmas sweater or whatever. And also, I noticed this pretty girl, she said, I have a bit of sexiness to my style. So, yeah, I think you can be wholesome and be a little bit sexy. And I think if you're trying to turn up the sexiness, then you have to figure out how to do that. Because, okay, so for example, if I wear a halter top, yeah, that is technically sexy, but it's not really emphasizing like my ass or anything. It's not like it. There are different levels, is what I'm trying to say. Sexiness exists on a spectrum. So, saying that you have a little bit of sexiness, your style may not be as sexy as what you think it is. Like, you might think that it's sexy to wear, I don't know, some capris or something, but in reality, maybe wearing shorts would be a little bit sexier on you. So, that's another question to ask yourself. How important is it to be sexy? Do I want to be more sexy or more wholesome? Or do I want a balance of both? Like, 50% sexy, 50% wholesome. So the way that I tend to do it is, let's say I want both. I'm going to emphasize one body part. So like if my booty is out, like let's say I'm wearing short shorts or a short micro mini skirt, then my top half is going to be a little bit more covered. And that's kind of my version of like balancing it out. So yeah, I'm like quote unquote wholesome in a way because my top half is not out, but my bottom half is out. So that's an example of kind of balancing it. Or if you want to go full blown, like do kind of like a nightclub look or something, you can do that as well. So it all comes down to what kind of attention do you want? What kind of attention do you want? What kind of image do you want to project? What collective image do you want to align yourself with? Because in my case, the reason that I don't wear like long skirts that go to the floor and like cottage core, I wouldn't say that that's my main style. The reason I don't dress like that is because a lot of trad wives and super wholesome church girls do dress like that. So it actually makes me not really want to dress that way because I don't really prefer the collective image of the church girls. That's not the collective image that I want to get my privilege from. I would rather dress as more of a corporate baddie. Like let's say I'm trying to be wholesome. I feel like even with the corporate baddie aesthetic, I can still be perceived as a little bit wholesome because, when you're in corporate, you're naturally dressing modest because you're at work or whatever. So the number one question I always ask myself is, what kind of attention do I want today? Do I want the male gaze, the female gaze? Do I want to be invisible? Do I want to just blend in? Do I want to make friends today, like female friends? If so, what is my friendship archetype? We talked about hater archetypes. So, what's my friendship archetype? Let's say I'm going to a women's event and I want to make friends. Who do I want to be friends with? Probably girly girls. So, that's why in my case, if I'm going to a women's event, I'm going to wear the most outlandish, the most obnoxious, super girly, super pink head to toe. I'm going to wear fur or sparkles or like something that's like literally like obnoxious. And then that's going to help me to attract female friends who are also super girly and stuff. But I'm talking about in the non-black settings though. If I'm in a black setting, I'm actually probably gonna repel female friends in a black setting just because in black female spaces they don't actually promote hyperfemininity. They tend to promote kind of like this soft tomboy, kind of like Aaliyah, the singer. So almost like a soft tomboy tends to be their standard of femininity. But I didn't grow up in that sort of culture, so I don't. That's not my standard of femininity. It's still pretty, but yeah, so it all depends on who you want attention from. That's it. And I have no problem admitting that. Because guess what? This is the Exoticals United page. So we're not going to sit here and lie and pretend like we don't like attention. No, bitch, I love attention. I enjoy soaking up attention. I enjoy getting paid. I enjoy all the privileges. Yes, I love getting free shit. I like getting the free drinks and the free breakfast and all that. And so I have no problem admitting that before I go out. Like I'll ask myself, what would I like today? What sort of privileges would I like to tap into today, if possible? And it's not guaranteed. Privilege is never guaranteed because you never know who you're going to encounter. But it's like, yeah, what kind of friends would I like to make? What kind of approaches or whatever? Like for this girl, she's dating. So it's like, okay, who do you want to get approached by? What race and what age? If I want to get approached by somebody who's in their mid 30s, then I'm not going to hang out by the college campus. If anything, I'd hang out probably by the grad school. Well, actually, the grad school is going to have even less because grad schools are even more female dominated than undergrad. But, that's a whole different topic. And also, this pretty girl, she said, I dress girly, but I also like showing off my shape or cleavage, so I don't know why people keep assuming I'm a church girl. Well, it's because the other church girls in your area, they're dressing the same way as you dress. So that's why I say that, like, whatever type of femininity I'm trying to repel. So, for example, I'm not really big on the whole ghetto fabulous type of vibe. And so I'm not going to dress like that. If all the girls in my city who are ghetto fabulous, if they all wear bonnets and like striped pajamas, then I'm not going to wear that. So I would say if you don't want to be associated with church girls, then don't dress like the church girls in your city. Do the exact opposite of what the church girls are doing. So if they're all wearing low buns and a fucking hat, they always wear the fedoras, or those hats that a lot of church girls wear where they're like worship leaders and stuff. They always have that hat on, and then they have like the beach wave curls, and then they have like the blue jeans with like some little ankle boots, and usually like a button-up shirt, something a bit more modest. Or they have the long dresses that go down past their knees. For the most part, a lot of them don't wear dresses above the knee. And most church girls don't wear backless stuff either. So if I don't want to be associated with church girls, I'm going to do the opposite of what they do then. So if she's wearing jeans, I'm wearing shorts. If she's wearing a covered up button up shirt, then I'm wearing a halter. I'm wearing strapless. If she has her hair in beach waves, I'm going to wear my hair in an updo or something completely opposite. I'm wearing a bust down. Because if that's not the privilege I want to tap into, then I'm going to do the opposite. I don't want to tap into that. So one thing you can also do is think about your least favorite type of femininity. And this is no shade. You don't have to admit what it is in the comment section or anything. But like using the church girl as an example. Okay, if that's my least favorite, if I don't like that, or like the homely look or whatever, kind of like you just wear your hair in a low bun 24/7, or like you never put hair products in your hair at all. Almost like this hippie type of thing. If those types of aesthetics are your least favorite, just dress in the exact opposite. So throw away all those long dresses then. Like don't wear that. And then if you feel like you're being sexy, okay, well clearly it's not sexy enough, because if it was, then you wouldn't be feeling this way. You wouldn't have the result. The results always match what you're doing. Like if you were successful, you would get the result you wanted. So, and this is no shade towards the girl who commented, but it's like, If I want sexy privilege, that's different than wholesome privilege. So if I prefer a sexy privilege, yeah, I'm going to dress sexy then. I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to have the short skirt or whatever looks sexy on my body type. As a matter of fact, that's another good question to ask yourself, Pretty Girl Club. Like, what looks sexy on you? In my case, the side bang, that looks very sexy on me. I've noticed for some other girls, they look really bad with the side bang. But I notice for me, if I have kind of this Aaliyah side bang or like even red lipstick on me tends to stand out. Hoop earrings, like if I'm wearing my hair curly and I put on hoop earrings and I wear red lipstick, for some reason I turn into an instant like video vixen. But for some people, it's the bust down or it's a short pixie cut or, maybe showing off something different. So, for this pretty girl who said, I dress girly, but I also like showing my shape or cleavage. Just because you're showing your shape or cleavage, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have sexy privilege. So that's totally different. And by the way, showing off a bunch of body parts, that's not the only way to be sexy. Because, like I said, for me, I can achieve sexiness with my hair and makeup. Actually, really don't have to do anything. People associate my phenotype itself with being sexy. People associate my skin complexion with being sexy. So that's where your phenotype comes in, your race, your collective image. I don't know what race this girl is. She could be white. She could be, I have women of all races on my Patreon. So I don't know if she's even black at all. But that's something like if you are white, do you have blonde hair? A lot of people associate blonde hair with being sexy, especially if you have that big bombshell, the big barrel curls and your hair is blonde or whatever. So all of those are things that I think about before I decide what kind of privilege I want. And by the way, when I use this phrase, the art of femininity, I feel like femininity is self-expression. I feel like it's more than just being a woman. It's part self-expression and it's also social signaling. So, people, they make assumptions about you based on your hair, your clothing, your body shape, your facial expression. Like one woman, she might have this sexy, glamorous type of feminine privilege, and then another girl, she might have this sweet, wholesome feminine privilege. Like, what's your eye shape, for example? Doe eyes are usually associated with being doll like. So, if you get told that you look like a doll or something like that, you probably have that sweet, wholesome type of pretty privilege, or like a princess. If you get a lot of comments saying that you look like a princess or something, if you get a lot of comments saying that you have a whimsical look about you, you look like a princess, a fairy, a mermaid. All of that kind of ties into this sweet, wholesome type of pretty privilege. And then you have the elegant women. These are the women who wear the tailored clothing. They wear those, not the hammer pants, but kind of like the slacks, so they wear like, I don't know, like button ups and all that. They wear their hair in a low bun. Maybe they have glasses. Maybe they have a pair of glasses on. And then there's also the girly feminine privilege. So when I say girly, what I mean is cute. So you look very youthful. Maybe your clothes are very playful. So a lot of floral prints. Maybe you do like you're wearing kind of poofy clothing. Some people think it's creepy. Kind of that kawaii style or like kind of those doll-like dresses or whatever. And you can have more than one type of feminine privilege at a time. I would just say that if you're having problems or not getting the type of feminine privilege you want, I think it's either with your look, maybe you're just not doing enough with your look, you're not changing it up enough, or it could also just be your environment. You don't have a big enough sample size. So maybe you actually did look sexy, but because you weren't in an environment where people noticed that, then it just didn't work. Like maybe you were around a bunch of old ladies or something. Because when I hear somebody say the word sexy, they're talking about the male gaze. That's it. You're talking about wanting the male gaze. So like for this pretty girl, for example, okay, let's say I want the male gaze of, I don't know, somebody in their mid 30s and then like he makes at least $100,000 a year. Okay, so then why would I be on a college campus? I wouldn't, because most likely that guy would already be done with college, or he's going to school online because he's already working, or he's already done with grad school. So those are things that you can think about as well, if you care about that. So if you're trying to be sexy, it's like, okay, who are you trying to be sexy for? What's his name? What race is he? How old is he? How much money does he make? Where does he live? If you're trying to be sexy for a guy that lives in Calabasas or he lives in Beverly Hills or something, then why would you go to Compton? You wouldn't go to Compton, right? You would only hang out in Calabasas, or you would hang out at Orange Theory, or some, those gyms, or like the trail or the park. If you're trying to be sexy for a guy who's in shape, then you're probably going to be hanging out in fitness oriented environments versus yoga class. Yoga classes have lots of women. I've never seen my type in a yoga class, but I'm not into the hipster guys. But, for this pretty girl, because you said you want to be sexy, okay, sexy for who? Who are you trying to look sexy in front of? Who do you want to think you're sexy? Because that word literally means you want somebody to want to sleep with you, or they find you sexually attractive, or they get aroused, they get turned on. Okay, who are you trying to turn on? I'm not shaming it. I'm just saying, as a part of your dark femininity strategy, yeah, who are you trying to turn on? Who are you seducing? Being sexy is a way of seducing someone. So, for example, when I wear red lipstick, it does look very sexy on me. It looks very seductive. Okay, who am I trying to seduce with my red lips? Who do I want to fantasize about my lips? What's his name? How old is he? Where is he at? And I'm just trying to ask these questions because I feel like a lot of creators, when they talk about femininity and seduction, they only talk about it from a theoretical perspective. They never make it practical. So that's the only reason I'm asking all these specific questions. Like, okay, who is the guy? What's his name? Does he even exist? And if he doesn't exist, that's fine. Who are you trying to be sexy in front of, though? Is it social media? Are you trying to get, you want to post a picture in red lipstick, or maybe you want to, I don't know, start your own lipstick company or something, and you want to use seduction as a sales tactic? So why do you want to be sexy? Like, what's your goal with being sexy? I don't even know if I can say that word that many times without getting flagged. But something else that just popped up in my head, who speaks the same language as you in terms of seduction? So, like, what's your seduction style? By the way, ChatGPT, this is where AI can come in, because, like, according to ChatGPT, I had it analyze my seduction style just for fun. So you can go on ChatGPT, you can take little quizzes and stuff on there. Like, you can put that in as a prompt. You could be like, hey, ChatGPT, give me a 10-question quiz to determine what my seduction style is. Give me a quiz to determine what my sexy traits are. So, for this pretty girl, she said that she wants to be more sexy as opposed to wholesome. Okay, so what parts of your body, what aspects of you get complimented the most and called sexy? So in my case, usually it's my mind. That's what I tend to get called sexy, is like the way that I think, or like I'm smart. So I like to stay in intellectual spaces. I've joined book clubs and stuff. I have this YouTube channel where I do commentary, and I'm a sociology nerd. I'm a psychology nerd. So if I'm in the room with a bunch of psychology nerds, that actually helps my, quote unquote sexy privilege, because that's the part of me that is sexy. It's actually a part of my personality. It's not necessarily just a physical trait. So what is your sexiest non-physical trait? So I just told mine. And then as far as what I think my sexiest trait is my skin complexion. I have no problem saying it, bitch. Who gon' check me? Who gon' check me? Yeah, bitch, I said it. I think my skin complexion is sexy as fuck. Yes, I get compliments on my skin. No, people don't compliment my skin in front of people who have different skin tones, because that's improper. You're not supposed to do that. But yeah, in my case, if I want to be sexy, I don't necessarily have to wear booty shorts or anything, because I'm skinny. I don't have an ass. I don't really have boobs and butt or anything. So for me, though, I've noticed that simply showing skin is sexy on me. I get a lot of compliments, or, I get perceived as more sexy just by showing skin itself, not necessarily cleavage or like my booty. Because like I said, there isn't anything there, really. So if you're trying to turn down the wholesome privilege and you want to tap into kind of this bad girl type of thing, or this sexy thing, then you can just think about, okay, what are my most sexually attractive non-physical traits? So in my case, it's my intellect, I guess, and then sometimes my humor. A lot of people comment and they say that I'm funny. And then maybe for you, it's something else. Like, can you sing or something? Can you dance? Maybe you have dance skills. Maybe you know how to belly dance or something. Or, so you could join a dance class. You could post stories and stuff of yourself dancing. Not like try hard, not like you're desperate, but you can just post yourself having fun, doing your little belly dance. Or if you're Pacific Islander, let's say you're mixed, Hawaiian and black or something. Pacific Islander, you can show yourself doing hula dancing with your pretty skirt on and the flower. That is actually a form of being sexy without being hypersexualized. And also for the exoticals, your background, like your actual background, might be stereotyped as being sexy. So are you, I don't know, like I said with Pacific Islander, there are some people that think that that is sexy. They like people who wear the cute little flowers in their hair, so there might be different aspects of yourself that are sexy without you even realizing it. So have you even tapped into your full smegsy potential? I'm just going to say smegsy because I don't know if it's going to flag me. Um, so have you tapped into your smegsy potential? Like, is it your background that people tend to think is smegsy? I will be careful with that though, because some people they might be fetishizing. I don't know. But are you a dancer? Are you super funny? Can you sing? A lot of people think that it's very attractive if you can sing really well, or do you speak another language? All of that, that's actually a part of the art of femininity. It's not just about makeup. It's not about fucking, oh, you can't wear red lipstick because you're dark, or like, oh, you have to wear slacks and dress like old money so you can attract white boomers. No, that's not the only aspect of femininity. Femininity is more than just clothes. It's more than just makeup. It has to do with who you are as a woman. What is your feminine fingerprint? What makes you stand out in the crowd? Because you don't want to be just generic. Like, I noticed that in some cultures, sometimes the women, they're just all copycats of each other, or they're just like a generic copy of what they think is cool. No, bitch, that's not how I want to be feminine. I don't want to be a fucking feminine copycat. But what's your personality type too? Because in my case, I'm an ENTJ. So an ENTJ, that personality type is more commonly found in men. It's actually more commonly associated with a masculine type of personality. So it's kind of like a dom. So I noticed in my case, some people view me as almost like this dominatrix type when I'm not even, like, I'm not trying to be that. That just has to do with my personality. So that's another thing. For this pretty girl who commented saying that she's stereotyped as wholesome, okay, well, are you an introverted, sweet, are you one of those types of girls where you're super reserved and you smile all the time, and maybe that's why you're being perceived as wholesome? So that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, actually. So if you're saying that you show cleavage and then you're still being perceived as this good church girl, well, that's still a form of sexiness. It just might not be the type that you want. But, that doesn't mean that it's less than, because that is still a different version of femininity. You have a classy sexy, or like a very subtle type of sexiness where, you're different than like Sexy Red, for example, who is just very overt with it. So you get to decide what you want your signature smexiness to be. So like in my case, usually it's my face. That's what I care about the most, like looking smexy. I'm going to care about my face as my number one priority. My hair will be number two, and then body will be number three. Or like my outfit, body, outfit, all that comes in third. But for some women, they want to emphasize just their butt. And, maybe they wear no makeup at all, and then they just have a BBL, and then, that's it when they turn around. So when they're from the front angle, they just look normal. Then when they turn around, it's like, oh my God, some women, they do that. They like to have a surprise, like peekaboo type of smexiness to them. So those are going to be some fun things to think about. I like these questions that you guys are asking me in the Patreon. But I also think that being sweet, that can be smegsy as well, because you're making the other person feel safe enough to seduce you. You're making the other person feel safe enough to approach you or pursue you. So that's, it still is sexy. It's just a different version of it. So you get to decide what you want. One thing that bothers me is when people, they view sexiness as a monolith. They feel like in the black culture, I've noticed, some of them think the only way to be sexy is showing your butt, showing your boobs, shaking ass, and twerking. And that's the only, it's like, no, sexiness is not a monolith. So actually, I don't have to do that. I can be sexy without doing it. I can just stand there and just be cute and just be nonchalant or whatever and just put on some fucking red lipstick. Boom. I'm getting the same level of attention as the person twerking on the table. Also, in my case, ambiguity is one of my feminine strategies. So I think if you are an exotical, like let's say you have a slightly ambiguous background, or like people don't know what you are, you're biracial or something. So they're like, wait a minute, is she black? Is she Hispanic? Is she white? Is she Asian? Like, what's going on? So your ambiguity, that can also be used as a form of sexiness because you have a mystery about you. Like, that's one thing I like is there's a mystery about me depending on how I do my hair, depending on the color that I do. If I do blonde, I'm going to look different than when I do black. Like if I do black Kankalon afro hair, that's going to look different than when I do blonde curly or blonde wavy. So I like that I have an aspect of mystery about me as well in terms of my background, depending on how I do my makeup. That applies to Exoticals, though. I'm not saying that that applies to everybody else. Um, so, in terms of this pretty girl saying that she kind of wants to be perceived as sexy, okay, well, what do you want people to think is sexy about you? Your skin, your face, your body, your cleavage, I don't know, your nails, your lips, your personality, the car you drive, like the way you carry yourself, the way you sing or dance. Like, is it a physical trait or is it a non physical trait or is it a part of your lifestyle? For me personally, being an entrepreneur, I think that's sexy. Me working for myself and being able to work from my laptop from anywhere in the world, I think that that is sexy as fuck. So, maybe for you it's your lifestyle is a part, like that's part of why a lot of girls do pilates and they drink matcha, because they think that that lifestyle is sexy. They like what it represents. They're showing that I have leisurely time, I've got a lot of free time. I'm rich in terms of time. I'm rich in terms of time, and then also I'm rich because I can afford pilates. That's one of the most expensive that's an expensive hobby. Actually, so Pilates is expensive. Running is an expensive hobby if you're doing races. If you're just running on the park or on the street, that's not expensive. But if you're doing races like marathons and all that, no, that's expensive because you have to pay for the shoes, you have to pay for the special bra, you have to pay for all the gels and the diet and all this stuff, the chiropractor visits, whatever you need. You have to pay for the recovery, doing the cryotherapy and all that. You have to pay to travel to go do all these marathons and shit. So for a lot of people, they don't realize that they're trying to seduce others, not just with their physical beauty, but also with their lifestyle. So for this pretty girl who wrote this, maybe it's not so much your looks. Maybe deep down inside, you actually want your lifestyle itself to be perceived as sexy. Like, oh yeah, I climb mountains. Or yeah, I go running. I just ran 15 miles. Or, like think about what you would think is attractive in a man. Like in my case, if a man says that he's very healthy, like when a guy said recently he doesn't eat red meat, I thought that was hot because I'm like, wow, that shows a form of discipline. I'm not saying that I'm not being a pick me or, oh, I like him because of that, but I'm just giving a small example. Like in my case, I think discipline is attractive. So that's why I like to be disciplined myself because it makes me feel sexy as well to know that, excuse me, bitch, I haven't had a hamburger in 6 months, actually. I haven't had spaghetti. I have not purchased pasta at a restaurant in years. So, yeah, I think that's sexy to know that I am that disciplined. That's a part of living a lifestyle that is like attractive. So that's something else to ask yourself for this pretty girl who wrote the question. Are there certain lifestyle things that you think are sexy? Because, maybe being a church girl, quote unquote, a girl who just goes to church on Sundays, maybe you just don't think that's sexy. And that's okay. Maybe you would rather go to brunch on Sundays. You think it's cute to like do Pilates and do the matcha thing or go get a smoothie bowl. I personally think that drinking protein shakes and getting high levels of protein, I think that's attractive. The fact that I know all the different protein shakes and, I can talk about that in depth because I've tried so many different protein shakes, I think that's sexy. So it doesn't have to just be how you look or what exact dress you're wearing. I think a lot of creators, they don't get into the nuances of femininity enough because I feel like femininity, it's a combination of your looks, your personality, your lifestyle, and also your seduction style and your magnetism. Like what kind of attention are you magnetizing towards you? Kind of like, how they talk about manifestation or whatever, you attract what you are. I don't necessarily believe in that at all, but I do think that there is something to be said. There are women out there who are very magnetic, and I think that it comes down to more than just what type of dress they're wearing. Okay, so as a spin-off to feminine privilege, like talking about being smexy, I think you have the visual side of it. There's the emotional sexiness, social sexiness, which is like charisma, your humor, your confidence, how you flirt. Some women are bad at flirting. So for this pretty girl, she's making it sound like she wants the male gaze or she wants to flirt with someone. Okay, so, even your flirting style can be attractive or unattractive. I don't like when men are hella sexual when they flirt with me. That is actually not sexy to me. But for some women, they like that. They like when the guy says, "Oh, look at that ass," or whatever. Some girls find that to be a compliment. I personally don't. But I think there's also the status component. Some people find your status sexy. So guess what, bitch? Yes, my beauty and my social status and my collective image, yes, it is perceived as sexy. Who gon' check me? Who gon' check me? But another aspect is your competence. So not just status, but like how good you are at something, your skill. Like I said about the dancing or the singing, or maybe you speak another language. Maybe you have some sort of talent, or, like a hidden talent or something. Actually, that's this mysterious, you've got this mysteriousness about yourself. Wait, is that a word? Mysteriousness? I don't know. But kind of having these mysterious traits. You just burst it out. Turns out you can sing really well, or it turns out you're really good at dancing, or you just burst out in another language and people weren't expecting that from you. So you just kind of elevated yourself because you had a sense of mystery about you. People weren't expecting that from you. So, what I'm trying to get at is privilege stacking within femininity. So, kind of figuring out what makes you special. So, for example, if someone sees you and you're beautiful, they might think, "Oh, wow, she's hot." And then maybe you start talking, and then that person is like, "Oh, wow, she's really smart too." And then it turns out you're also a sweet girl, and maybe you are wholesome. Then the person's like, "Oh, wow, and she's really nice." And then maybe you flirt with that person. Then the person's like, "Oh, wow, and she likes me." So do you see how you just stacked several different types of feminine privilege? You stacked several different, like, seductive qualities, but they weren't necessarily tied to, like, how you look. It wasn't necessarily tied to, like, the dress you were wearing. And when it comes to sweetness, you never want to underestimate the power of being sweet, because that's actually one of my biggest qualities. I actually come off as a complete bitch on YouTube, but that's okay because this is the only place where I can, like, express that fully. But in real life, people give me that comment as well, that I'm very sweet. So being sweet, it disarms people. It means that you're charming. You're charming. You know how to disarm people. You make people feel safe with you. That's actually a good quality. That's not a bad thing at all. When you're sweet, you're more likely to be popular as well because you're likable. You're a sweet girl. Nobody's going to hate on the sweet. If somebody hates on you and you're a sweet person, they immediately get exposed as being jealous. That's one of the things I love actually about being sweet in real life is you can't really talk shit about me because I don't do anything to anyone in real life. So if somebody starts saying, "Oh, I don't like Exoticals United. Oh, she's a bad person," or whatever, well, you're going to be exposed as being a hater because my reputation is literally that I'm a sweet person. So for the pretty girl who wrote this question, she seems to be interpreting wholesome as maybe you're not as sexy. And that's, two things can be true at the same time. You can actually be both. So maybe you're just both. And then if you don't like one or the other, you can just dial that part down and kind of emphasize whatever you do want. But I think when it comes to like sexiness and desirability, it's not just about the clothing itself or the makeup. It's more so like who's wearing it and how does that person carry themselves and how does that person interact with others and what's that person's type, because different types of people find different qualities to be attractive. So, for example, in my case, I'm not attractive in the ghetto black community, and I don't have a problem saying that. I am not considered attractive. I'm considered dorky and nerdy in the ghetto black community because that's just not their standard. Their standard of sexiness in the ghetto black community actually is somebody more like Sexy Red. So I think there's no such thing as like a universal you're considered perfect to everybody. There's no such thing as that. So you have to pick and choose which community do I want to be perceived as sexy in? What comes natural to me? What's my cultural background? Do I like my cultural background? Do I want to socialize within my cultural background, or am I trying to transition into another cultural background? But what do you ladies think? I really liked this episode. Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.